Let's see. Let's see. Is it popping up anywhere yet? Going live. Hello and welcome to the live stream. We just finished our chit chatting. And so now we're going to be doing other things. We're going to actually be talking about the Blues Brothers before we talk about the Blues Brothers.
We're on a mission from God.
All right. I got so many screens open right now. I'm trying to figure out who's on what and what I'm need to pay attention to. Yeah, I felt bad for the Patreons. I realized I haven't done a live stream since October.
Ooh, it's been a
I've been,
minute.
I've been slacking for you guys. Yeah, it's been a crazy pulling off that Band of Brothers series. Was a lot of work.
Yeah, that's been like epic. I haven't listened to any because that feels like a commitment, but not to mention I've never seen Band of Brothers. Come on, it's a guy thing.
I don't even know what to say. You
I
are
just
correct. There is no dude that I've ever mentioned that to that said I haven't seen it.
yeah. I'm not saying I'm
Even
against seeing it. I definitely would sit down and watch it at some point, but it's just not top of my priority list with movies. So
that's because it was made after 1990.
hmm. But I mean, we will get into some of those later decades at some point because I did send you some on my
You sent me a
list,
good
you
list.
know?
You sent me a list, and I actually approved some of them.
Yeah, we're some of them. Listen to you. Hey, I tried to leave out the ones that I thought that you wouldn't like.
What was it? The girl from Stone Mountain or Fire Mountain or something?
Oh, The Girl on the Mountain. That's actually
Girl
a
on the
really good
Mountain.
movie.
I know
Yeah.
you said that. I think I tried to watch it once and I just couldn't
I did a
couldn't.
blog post on it once. And I had a really good conversation with the director.
Well, that makes a big difference.
Well, it was I mean, it was low budget, but it had a good message. You know, it was a strong theme. I liked it, but
See, and
that's okay.
I have a hard time watching those because if you immersed yourself in all this stuff that's really really good, like watching I mean, and that's also why like the quality of this podcast from an audio and visual standpoint is really important to me, um, because it bugs me if it doesn't. And as we've said a few times, I don't really do anything half-assed. So
Mm-hmm. Oh, I appreciate that about you.
I am unsure if I'm going to get an interruption by my grandson here anytime now,
That's
um,
cool.
as he goes to bed. He doesn't really respect the closed doors. So, Sarah, I texted you yesterday as I was watching, and this movie is 2 hours and 15 minutes. It could easily be 90. Easily.
I'm
Um,
not going to argue with that. I mean, I no, I think that. What can I say? I mean, like I texted you back. This is what happens when you have cocaine built into your budget.
I love that response.
Because the movie legit
Pour one
had
out for Mr. Belushi.
indeed, yes, to John. Um
Um,
Actually, it's so funny. I have a friend named John who I went to college with, and he, in his size and shape, resembles John Belushi. And so when we were in college, he was a huge fan of this movie, which is how I got turned on to it. And he and this guy on his dorm floor for the annual lip sync did the Blues Brothers from the end of the movie, and they had
mhm.
like the outfits and the
Oh, nice.
dancing and everything was spot on. It was awesome. It was so good. So
The end of the movie, the concert at the what is it, the Palace,
yeah.
was that is an amazing scene. I
Oh
love
my
that.
gosh, yeah.
Just so much fun to watch. The rest of the stuff, I was like, this is kind of over the top.
Of
Uh,
course it is. It's John
so
Landis. Oh my god. The guy
All
is
right, what
over
else
the
did John
top.
Landis do?
Oh God. All right, Coming to America, Trading
Uh huh.
Places,
Uh huh.
Beverly Hills Cop 3, Animal House, Clue.
I don't know that
Geez,
we
what
could
else?
ever
Well, he's
do Animal
probably
House on this podcast.
yeah, probably not and stuff. But he's probably best known for the Twilight Zone thing that happened. You ever heard of the Twilight Zone movie?
It's not ringing a bell.
Okay. Well, they made a big screen version of the Twilight Zone back in 83, I think it was, and it had 4 segments that were based on original episodes from the Twilight Zone TV show. And
Mm-hmm.
they were directed by 4 different people: Joe Dante, Steven Spielberg, George Miller, and John Landis. And this was a huge scandal because John Landis directed this episode, and in one scene it took place in Vietnam, where he had like a stunt with a helicopter, flying over a village and stuff. And there was this guy who was supposed to be rescuing 2 Vietnamese children. Now, first of all, the 2 Vietnamese children that he had as acting in this movie were illegal. Like they were filming at night. They didn't have permits for them, so they basically hired them under the table. Okay. No, it you're laughing, but it gets much worse. So what happened was basically there was a malfunction and the helicopter crashed and it killed all 3 of the actors. The 2 children and the actor carrying them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's ended up stretching out for years. There was a massive court case. It basically kind of ruined John Landis's career. Steven Spielberg like ran away from all of this and went to India to film Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He was out of the country like the very next week after this
Wow.
happened, and so he was no dummy. He fled. But yeah, so it was this huge scandal, and they've written books about it, and it was a big bad deal, and a very tragic accident. But to be honest, John Landis has always been kind of a crazy person, like wanting it, like bigger and more intense and crazier and stuff like that. And unfortunately, this time it really
When
went
you
badly.
when you try to push the
So
envelope or live at the edge, you'll fall off.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, while Blues Brothers wasn't as crazy of a movie slash set as Animal House,
We're
because I
pretty
mean,
sure no one
Animal
died
House
on
was
this one.
no, but Animal House was insane, man. Because like, first of all, that was sponsored by National Lampoon, and
Right.
those people were freaking insane, man. Like funny but insane. It's
They're basically the
just
Mad
crazy.
magazine of movies.
Yeah, well, if anybody, if you ever get a chance,
That's a
it's okay.
dated
I'm.
reference.
I know, right?
Glad we're
I
not
got it.
recording.
No, I got it. Um, but if you ever get a chance, it's. I mean, I'll put the disclaimer out there. It's wildly inappropriate, rated R. But there's a movie on Netflix called A Futile and Stupid Gesture, and it's about National Lampoon and the 2 guys who founded it. Doug Kenny, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Henry Beard, I think that's what it was. So they founded the National Lampoon, and it's just about like how that kind of gave birth to like Saturday Night Live, and how like Animal House and all these other things came out of that. But those people, they were insane. They were insane. They were like the constant stream of like drugs and alcohol and sex and just craziness. Like, I mean, again, led to some funny stuff, but whoa, I'm not sure if it was really worth it. The amount of like half their people like ended up dead from drug overdoses, and and stuff like that. I mean, like John Belushi, and it's just anyways. So yeah, so when they did Animal House, so you've got John Landis as a director who's already crazy, and then you've got John Belushi in your cast. You've got the National Lampoon guys running things behind the scenes. I can't even imagine how
Basically, like, okay,
nuts.
how can we turn up the notch past 10? How can we turn up the
Yes,
volume past 10?
really went way past 11. That's for sure.
And I think, hey, let's drive a car through a mall.
Oh my gosh, that scene is so funny. That's what I mean. We can get into it a little bit more when we're actually recording, but that's one of the funniest things, like for me, just about how they're so just like blasé about everything that happens to them.
Oh,
They're going
look,
through a mall. They're going,
Pier
yeah,
1.
a Pier One.
Yeah.
Yeah, this mall's got everything. It's like, things are blowing up, and they just kind of get up and brush themselves off and
Yeah.
keep going.
So
Mhm.
the clips I have got that scene where they see the penguin and she starts smacking them around because they're
Oh my
cursing in front
god,
of
that
her.
move. That's so funny. That scene is hysterical.
I've got two different little mission from God statements. I have two versions of when they open at the palace, and it's like, oh, we just want to thank everybody for being here, blah blah blah. Uh, I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to open the podcast with it, and there's a part of me that wants to close the podcast with it.
I think we should open with it
All
because,
right,
for starters, we usually never know how the podcasts are going to end until we get there anyway.
true.
And that feels more like an opening thing than a closing
All
thing.
right.
But that's
So
just
then what
me.
we'll use is we'll use the 160 miles to Chicago, or 106. I got
Yeah.
dyslexic on my text on my typing. And then Jake begging, like
Yeah.
just the stream of lies that flew out of his mouth. The whole Carrie Fisher thing was ridiculous, but
I know
yeah,
another ironic trivia tidbit is that apparently when they were filming Blues Brothers, John Landis pulled Carrie Fisher aside and gave her the task of keeping John Belushi away from the cocaine.
this was that era. I mean, like you said,
but
Animal House,
he had
Caddyshack was
Carrie,
same thing.
but he had Carrie Fisher try to keep John Belushi away from the cocaine.
I feel like we shouldn't be making fun of two dead people.
I know, but they'd probably laugh about it.
Yeah, they're like, ah, I was dumb. Um,
Yeah.
all right, so I like what you uh that idea that you said. What would our lives look like if we had the same level of faith that Jake and Elwood had?
Truth.
Because they saw the light.
Mm-hmm. I see the light.
Which, and I'm looking at your notes is what I'm doing here. Um,
That's cool.
um. So what you want to frame this about is what it would be like to have the faith of the Blues Brothers.
That was the most God thing that I got out of it. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like they're constantly going around. We're on a mission from God. We're on a mission from God. We can't fail.
Yeah,
Like when they're getting ready to drive through the mall, they're not going to catch us. We're on a mission from God.
that's right. I tried to get I tried to get the mission from God cuts, and I only remembered two of them. So
Yeah.
I know there was more, but I was
One of the other
also
funny
handling a
ones is
4-year-old today. So
when they're in the cafe with Aretha Franklin and they're like, "Ma'am, would it make any difference if we told you that we were asking Matt to do a holy thing?" And she's like, "Don't you blaspheme in here! Don't you blaspheme!"
oh,
The
I kept that one
cameos were
before she said the blaspheme.
the cameos in this movie were off the hitch, man.
I
It's
don't. They
like,
weren't even cameos. They were just like full on parts.
oh, it was fantastic.
And I think most of the people that they were actually musicians more than actors.
Yeah, yeah, it was so great to see some of them though. I mean, Cab freaking Calloway. Oh my gosh, it was. Oh, he was amazing. He was really great. But I mean, yeah, all of it. Ray Charles. Oh my gosh, that was so funny when the kid's trying to steal the guitar and he shoots.
Well, I just watched All the Light We Cannot See,
Oh.
which is also about a blind person shooting a gun.
Oh,
So it was a very similar looking concept.
okay. One of my
It's
friends,
a series on Netflix.
one of my friends just watched that documentary on We Are the World and stuff. I can't remember what it was, if that's the name of it or whatever. But anyways, they did a documentary on like the 40th anniversary of the We Are the World collaboration, and apparently there was one section where Stevie Wonder, says, "Hey, I'm gonna go use the bathroom," and Ray Charles goes, "I'll show you where it is."
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, you ready to pray and see what's going to happen?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're not here all night since you're tired. You work 14-hour days.
I know, but I've been looking
You're burning
forward
the
to
candle
this.
on both
So
ends. At least it's pulled you away from Skyrim.
this is true. Well, I'm actually fasting Skyrim for Lent, so
Good. That's best. That's as much as I enjoy video games. That is a time suck for productivity.
it really is. Yes, very much
And you
so.
get to the end, you're just like, what have I actually accomplished? Nothing. I feel worse
Not
about
much.
myself now.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. Let's pray. Jesus, Father, Holy Spirit, we thank you for this time that Sarah carved out to talk about the Blues Brothers, and I just pray that her joy would be infectious to not just me but to the people listening, and that we would, as we talk, we would talk about deep things. Um, Jesus talks about, he tells stories to confound the wise of this world, but so that the foolish, the weak, can understand it. And so we just pray for understanding of this parable, because if a movie is loved, then there's something reflected in ourselves, and that being created by you means that there's something of a reflection of you in it. So I just pray that we would pull that out, that we would see it like the needle in a haystack, um, and that we would just constantly be in pursuit of getting to know you deeper and deeper every day. I pray for Sarah in this time that you would just give her space to breathe, help her to have that faith, but to also not feel like she's kind of got to do everything all at once, and that she would be able to rest in her faith and not burn herself out through it. That you would just give her uh, moments of peace, moments of clarity, and yeah, moments of joy as well. And hopefully, this is one of them. May it re-energize her as she enters sort of a new stage of her career, and putting in some effort and trying to get some stuff done. That you would be in it always. We consecrate this time, this equipment, our minds, our hearts. We May your breath fill our lungs. May your words fill our mouth and your thoughts fill our minds as we engage in this conversation. And it's through the power in the name of Jesus Christ that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me, jiving on the YouTube channel, check us out there if you haven't done that, is Sarah Daniel. Hey, Sarah, how you doing today in those sunglasses at night?
Well, Paul, it's 106 miles to Chicago. We've got a full tank of gas, a half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and I'm wearing sunglasses. So let's hit
You're stepping all over the clips.
it. We're on a mission from God.
Oh, she's coming out full bore, full bore. She's fully loaded tonight,
Hey, I've
and
been
we're not
working a
drinking.
lot. I've been like ready to have some fun, So this is great.
Well, thank you for joining us once again. It's been a little while, ever since 8-Bit Christmas. But you do a 10-week series, you kind of puts a damper on ongoing relationships.
It does. That's a commitment for sure.
So, how have you been?
Busy. There's been a lot going on. Trying to really make some good progress with my writing, and I've been feeling pretty good about that because I have fantastic coach Joshua Chad, best coach in the world. He has given me lots of homework where I have to write 2,000 words a week, and this is great because I think I am finally going to finish the second book in my series. I think I've talked about it before. I'm
Yeah.
working on a series, and it's going to be 4, might be 5 books at this point, the way
Oh,
I'm
I thought
writing.
it started at 3.
No, well,
It's
no,
growing.
I think it's always been four, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, I finished the first book last year, and I've been working on the second book for a long time, kind of stopping and starting, but really trying to push in and make that happen. And I'm hopefully going to be getting it done in the next couple of months, and so I can move on to the third book because Realm Makers has a contest that they started back in the fall, and it's specifically for authors that have never been published. And my first three chapters that I entered made the finalists. So in my yes, I'm very excited in my category. So that's top 5 in my category, top 30 overall. So they're going to be announcing the winners in March. We're recording this at the end of February, so they'll be announcing those in the middle of March. So I'll find out if I won, which would be amazing. If I win, I get to have my work looked at by industry professionals, which is both terrifying and exciting. But so I'm really trying to make some good progress with my writing because if God smiles on me and I do win, I could have some people interested in my work. So very excited about that. And I also recently became an official real life published author because I had
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. I had a short story that I wrote about a year and a half ago that got published in an anthology called Frayed. And that is a group of people that were at the Rhubarb Writing Academy that I attended back in the spring of 22. And the publisher whose home we stayed at offered to publish an anthology of our short stories that we did for the Academy. So mine is included in that. It's called A Worth More Than Gold. And it's nice. I like it. It's kind of like a little fairy tale-esque, story, but I enjoyed writing it, and I've had some good feedback on it. So, please feel free to check that out because I would love for you to read it. So
And where can they find that anthology if they're
they can
looking
find
for
it
it?
on Amazon. It's in Kindle, like ebook format, and also in paperback. And yeah, probably Amazon is your best bet. So we
Yeah.
can put the links in
You
that in the
go to
show links,
Amazon
I'm
for
sure.
everything these days.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, local businesses.
You got nothing.
so, so Sarah, uh, when you said, okay, let's kick off 2024 with your next, you sent me this list of
I
like 10
did.
or 15 movies on there, I think. And not all of them were the 80s. So I feel like we're getting you to branch out. Maybe it's kind of like your kid, just like, okay, enough of the chicken tenders. Let's try some sushi.
Well,
Let's
I
try.
mean,
I mean, granted, this movie is 1980, so this doesn't count. I gave you one last one before forcing you out of your comfort zone. But why was this? Why is this one? You're like, we got to do this one. I love this one. This is going to be my 1980s movie to die on, hill to die on.
well, I mean, hopefully it's not to die on. I'm sure there's
Wow,
plenty
really
from the
built
80s
this
we
up.
haven't picked out yet. My gosh.
It's
So,
because you
well,
and Britt fight over them.
well, we do. It's true. There's still some that I want to do that he's like, nope, you can't have it. I'm doing it. I'm like, oh, come on, man. So I don't know. I'm sure that there will still get a few in there because Britt and I had a very long conversation
Yeah, he
over
gave you the
text where
Heisman.
we were
He
just like,
stiff armed you away from Willy
Willy
Wonka.
Wonka, I know
So
he wouldn't let me, and I was
so we
bummed.
did
But
that
I
for
was like,
Easter.
I had to pick a hill to die on. But we still have lots of ideas for the '80s. Lots. We were talking about 1981's Clash of the Titans. We were talking about Excalibur. We were talking about Conan the Barbarian.
When we say
The
you,
Breakfast.
when we say we, you mean you. You put these on your
No, we
list.
were both. We were both throwing
Oh,
them
you and
out.
Britt were.
Yeah,
You and
me
Britt
and Britt were
were.
both. The Breakfast Club. There was a lot we were bringing up. So the 80s is not dead yet, my friend, for sure. But we have already gone through a lot. Either we or you have gone through a lot of my favorite movies, per se. I mean, me and Britt, our
Mm-hmm.
top 5 lists have like 50 on them, but.
Yeah.
Um, but we've gone through a lot of them, and either you've done them before I came on the show, or you and I have done them, or you refuse to do them for reasons of your own, which is fine. The last unicorn.
I have a sense of taste.
Oh, shut your face. You're so uncultured. So yeah, so this movie, like I was saying before we started recording, I was turned on to this movie when I was in college because I have a friend named John who actually kind of resembled John Belushi, in size and shape, and he loved this movie, and he and a friend of his actually did the final number for the lip sync that year at school, and they had it spot on, and it was awesome and stuff. So we just got a kick out of it. Was just something we always watched together. And when I became a Christian, and God started showing himself to me in movies, I just loved the way the Blues Brothers were so like, oh yeah, we're on a mission from God. We can't be stopped. No, we're going to succeed because God says so. And I love that they had that kind of faith, and also the movie is hilarious and ridiculous, and like you said, way over the top, and it's just fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, that mall car
Oh
chase just felt
my
like
god.
it dragged on forever.
No, I
And
love
so
that
did the actual car chase later. How many
Oh,
how many movies need two car chases that just they're more like, yeah,
I'm pretty sure
ridiculous.
this movie had a record going for number of police cars wrecked.
I think that was actually their goal. How many stores can we crash in? And is there actually a capable person driving these cars? Because they're just going to go all over the place.
Oh yeah, and they had to get a special permit for that Volvo that they dropped from a crane. They had to
Oh,
like
yeah.
they had to do a practice drop to make sure it was going to fall like where it was and supposed to, and not float somewhere else and kill somebody. And oh yeah, that was crazy. And then apparently when they're driving under the L train, they were legit going 120 miles an hour. Like that was not
See,
effects.
that's what I was
That
like.
was
Hey, let's make a movie where we can drive through a mall, where we can go 120 in downtown Chicago.
mhm.
That was sort of the goal of the movie, is let's do this because this sounds fun.
Well, like I said, Paul, this is what happens when you have cocaine built into your budget. Because apparently, cocaine was part of the movie budget.
Yep, and that was that era back then. Um,
Hmm.
I've heard very similar things about Caddyshack. That
Oh,
uh,
yeah. Well, made by the same people, so yeah.
yeah, it all fits. So we talk a lot about how movies, the stories that move us are about stories of transformation or sort of realization. And you could say, okay, well, Jake and Elwood Blues, the Blues Brothers, they were transformed through this movie. Um, I'm not sure how transformed they were, as just they were using their talents for good instead of evil. But then even then, it's like it depends on which side of the road you're on, because Bob kind of thought they were evil. It's like,
And then they were going up against real evil, like the Illinois Nazis. I hate Illinois
yeah.
Nazis.
The other states' Nazis are fine. Just the
Yeah,
Illinois
yeah,
ones, they're the
those
ones that get on
Illinois
our nerves.
Nazis.
But there is something to this, right? And this is an iconic movie. Everybody knows. Everybody that I said, "Oh, I'm doing Blues Brothers," or "Oh, we're on a mission from God." I feel like I should
Yeah.
probably key this one up while we're sitting here. So we'll have another one coming up, I'm sure, later. I didn't catch them all. Um, Going through some of my own tech transitions here. Still working out some bugs, but sorry, I get distracted. We were doing this as a live stream, and a friend Juan, who was on the who was part of the Band of Brothers series. We talked about episode 3. He's busting out some great trivia, some great knowledge over here, and I get distracted
Oh,
because
really?
he's
What
talking
kind
about
of
the.
trivia?
Yeah, well, he just said John Landis stormed after every final take to a scene. I don't know what that means. Um, I don't. He stormed off every final take to a scene. I don't know what a scene means there. Juan, clarify that for me. But this idea of the Blues Brothers wearing their outfits like religious vestments. Statement of their faith in the power of music to save souls. The congregation is the audience and the pulpit is the stage. Because as sort of silly and ridiculous as this movie was, I really try not to sound like a stick in the mud. Um, the scene at the palace when they're doing their thing is just phenomenal. You're singing along, you're probably dancing along. Uh, Actually, a funny story because you brought up your friend John who did the lip sync. I worked at a camp when I was kind of the tail end of high school, early college, and so this was early '90s, let's say. And there was a talent show at the end of the summer, and so me and say 7 of my buddies got together. 4 of them dressed up like women. 4 of us did not, and we came out and said and sang "Stand by Your Man."
Come on. That's awesome.
Oh, so he said every cut when he's like after the final take, he stormed off because he was like, "Oh, it's just so good, I'm out of here." That's what
Oh wow.
Juan was
Okay,
saying about trying
that's
to land us.
confidence.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, that was incredible," but you see so many, you're like, "Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that was amazing," and he just stormed off, but nobody knew where he went. Sort of like Forrest Gump running into the tunnel, the locker room there. So if we sort of look at this, all right, and this is where I think you want to land, Sarah. This idea, uh, it really starts with the penguin, but who is Jake? Who is Elwood? And the movie. I'm not going to recap the movie. It's 40 plus years old, but Jake gets out of jail. He's been in there for 3 years. He's coming back. His brother sort of lives this terrible dump of a life. Lives in a one like a 10 square foot apartment, um, and right off the train tracks. They come so often you don't even notice them anymore because
Yeah.
they're constantly going. And then there's this random Carrie Fisher showing up to blow things up, and but this I think we're and we're rambling just like the movie sort of rambles. But this idea that sticks with us, I think, in every scene, in every situation, is what I'm going to call the unflappability of their faith. And uh, just the fact that nothing seemed to phase them, whether
Yeah.
they're driving through the mall, whether they're picking themselves up out of the bricks, whatever it is, they had confidence that they would get through it. And, um, but I want to start off with playing that scene from the Penguin, the nun. You got to have some balls to actually call a nun a penguin. I'm not
Well,
sure they ever did it.
her
They didn't
name. I
actually
well,
do it to her face until the scene, but uh,
I read the novelization, and her name is actually Sister Mary Stigmata.
as it is as so will you be reading from us at some point in this, or was there nothing much to glean in
Um,
the novelization?
I mean, I got a smidge. Truthfully, the book was a bit different than the movie in that it spent most of the book of them trying to get the band back together, and they spent a lot more time on trying to find the guys. So it wasn't as interesting to me as the movie was, because they
Less
spent less time
singing.
on that part. Yeah, well, obviously. Um, but there was a couple of things, like there was I might share a little bit. There was a
All
couple
right.
of things.
So this idea of the unflappability, and so after it's interesting. The first thing they do after Jake gets out of jail is they go back to the orphanage where they were brought up, because as uh, Elwood tells him, you told the penguin you'd be here when as soon as you got out, so you're going to do it. You're going to keep your promise to the penguin. And so they're sitting up and they sit in these little tiny desks, which is actually funny. This scene, watching this scene, made me laugh out loud. So
Oh,
it's
I was like crying with laughter at this scene. It's so funny.
so here they are. They're kind of catching up, and the boys are sitting in these as any adult who has kids and goes to an open house and you have to sit in the elementary school size desks, this is what the boys are doing as she's sort of outlaying the as they're catching up over the last 3 years. And as you can hear, Sarah truly enjoys this scene. But to really to sit down with this for a second, as Sarah composes herself, and it's a funny, just a funny scene as they're slapping them back around. So she sister penguin, sister Mary Stigmata is she's over the orphanage. Isn't this the church's job to take care of the orphans? It was like, they don't want to do it. And it's interesting, the group that should be helping is not like like she would accept money from them, but she's like, your money's no good because you're gonna go steal, you're a thief, and all these kind of little supernatural things that show that how holy she is because the doors open and close without anybody being there, or she floats back from the,
Oh my God,
the door.
so
But what she says is basically, you've disappointed me. I don't want you to come back till you've redeemed yourself. Right?
Yeah, and I will put one little nugget from the novelization is when Jake's trying to like excuse the fact that the whole reason he was in prison in the first place was he held up a gas station and he was trying to steal money to pay the band and stuff, and she's like, well, yeah, you broke the law, you go to jail. And he's like, well, I didn't have any choice, there wasn't any other way. And she goes, there's always another way out, a Christian way out. God doesn't encourage people to be thieves, you just didn't look hard enough. Yeah, so she kind of like is like, yeah, no, you just did what was easiest at the moment, what seemed right to you. So
And that theme of, we'll see it later when he's there begging for his life from Carrie Fisher, because
yes.
Does she ever have a name?
I think her name was
Sarah,
Camille.
if she did, I'm sure you'd know it.
I think it was Camille.
But as he's going through the litany of lies, it gets to the end, is like, whatever had happened, it's not my fault.
Yes.
And sort of the reverse of the Goodwill Hunting scene.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's like, oh, it's not your fault. Where he's like, no, nothing's my fault. Nothing that's bad happened to him is his fault. He sort of has blamed everything on everybody else. Even like he blames Elwood for letting the band fall apart, even though he owed them money, because obviously he's sort of a con man, and not a very good one.
Well, a little.
Yeah. But this idea, like that setting of, trying to think what I'm trying to say. Here it is. Here's the church who has the opportunity to help the orphans, and they choose not to. Here is reprobates, unredeemed, filthy thieves. And she's like, no, I'd rather be sent out to the missions. I'd rather go live in the street than to take your money. And as Jake said, well, you're up shit creek then. Not the show, but
yeah. Different creek.
But this idea, and I think we sort of lived in this sort of cultural mindset a lot, where there's a lot of times we can look and see this either option A or option B. That's it. There's no other choice.
Yeah.
But man, I can't remember his name. Cab Calloway's character,
Curtis.
Curtis offers them another choice, and he says, "You boys need to get yourselves to church."
Yeah, you need some churching up.
Probably, it's a terrible accent. I'm gonna get canceled for that one.
Yeah, but again, like even Curtis was kind of like rebuking Jake for stealing, because Jake's complaining to him, this is again in the novelization. He's complaining to Curtis about how he just offered to help, Sister Mary, and she just blew him off. And Curtis was like, well, Jesus was against stealing in the Bible, if I remember correctly, and he's like, yeah, maybe that makes me old fashioned. Maybe I got so old somewhere along the line I started to believe that two wrongs don't make a right. And Elwood says, what you're saying is stealing doesn't sit well with Christ. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. He didn't even steal from Caesar, Caesar with all
Yeah.
that money from the Roman Empire. Why, Jesus, he could have said, take that man's money and give it to the poor. But he really thought that kind of thinking would lead to bad things. So even while he told the rich to sell everything and give it to the poor, he was against stealing. So yeah, stealing is bad. So, and then he sends them to church. He's like, you guys need some churching up, and Jake, obviously, like he says in the movie, he's really against it. He's like, I don't want to hear no jive talking preacher. And, he's like, and in the book, he says, why wait for Jesus to show me the light? That's plain dumb. Jesus never done me any favors in the past, so why should he now? And Curtis
Mm.
goes, well, maybe he's been saving up for the right time. I mean, how many miracles you think you got coming, Jake Blues? Could be Sister Mary's right. You boys could use some churching up. Maybe if you go where God is, he'll be more likely to show you something. So get on down to the Triple Rock and catch Reverend Cleophas James. You boys listen to what he has to say, and something might happen. And he get wise, get to church, and he's like, and as soon as you leave, I'm going to start praying for you to do that. And then Jake goes, well, maybe I'll just do that, just to make your prayers come true. So,
Right. Almost like he's trying to spite him or doing
yeah,
it out of spite to say,
yeah.
almost like, I'm going to prove that you're wrong, that you're an idiot, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah,
And
I like that scene when he tells them to get to church and they go. That's great.
well, and I remember uh, when I was, I don't know what word you want to use. The term my mom uses is when I was the prodigal son.
Okay.
Um, I was away. I had divorced my wife. I was not going to church. Um, and it wasn't like I didn't believe it. I just kind of had that Jake attitude of, I, okay, yeah, I read the Bible. I've read it. I know, I believe it's true, but I've never experienced any of the power. I was like, what's he done for me? Right. Great. I know the answer when I die and go to heaven. I know what I'll tell God. Well, Jesus died for my sins, so I'm good. Right. And that doesn't help much here.
Yes.
If
Yes.
that's your concept. Um,
Yeah.
and I remember I just started my master's program, and I got asked to leave the job I was at that required the master's program. And like, I considered going back to church, but I'm like, man, I don't want to just go back to church because I'm like, hey, I need a job. So I thought I'd try church. Uh, and as you were saying that, I was like, oh man, there is a little bit of some sort of parallels between me and Jake back in the day.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, like I was brought up in the Catholic Church, and like for me, I'm not like I know plenty of wonderful Christians in the Catholic Church that like are so in love with Jesus and on fire for him and stuff. But I know my personal experience was, since I grew up in it and I went to a Catholic school, um, it wasn't alive for me. Like I didn't know anything about Jesus. Like all the prayers that we had to say, the Hail Mary and the Our Father, they were just words. They didn't mean
Right.
anything. I did not know what it meant that Jesus died for my sins. I had no idea what that meant. It was just words that I would reel off during masses and stuff. And it wasn't until I started to go to a different church. I actually started going to a Baptist church youth group where they explained that Jesus went to the cross and took my place and took my punishment for my sins. And I remember having this I see the light moment, like, is that what that means? this phrase that I had heard for years and years. And finally I was like, oh, that's not just words. That's not just something that we're saying. That means something. That means something huge. That's that's changing light. I see the light, I see the light, so I mean, and that's part of the reason why I love that church scene, is because Jake is like that. I mean, he was brought up in a Catholic orphanage. He's heard that jive Jesus talk his whole life, and stuff, and that's all it's been for him up until then, is just words. It's just been words that people have been saying to him and that he's heard around him and stuff. But when he goes to church, and this I love, I think I put it in my notes, what God knows what is going to speak to each of us. Like, he knows what turns us on and what makes us come alive, and it's different for everybody. But for Jake and Elwood, the Blues Brothers, it was music and stuff. And so
Mm.
in that scene, that, like, they get to the church and they're listening to the preacher. I mean, come on, James frickin' Brown. Come
Yeah,
on, man.
Pastor James Brown.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Hit me.
Yeah. Yes. So
I feel good.
Do you see the light? So they're standing in the back of the church, with their arms crossed, like, whatever,
Looking at his
Well,
watch.
yeah, while he's preaching, just being, yeah. But then the music starts and people start singing and stuff. And then you can see Jake, like, in the back, and he starts, like, twitching and, like, trembling and stuff. And even Elwood's like, what's going on with you? And stuff. And then all of a sudden, it's revelation. And Jake gets it and stuff. And he's like, yes, I see it now. I understand. There's more than just the words that I've been hearing my whole life. And he starts this, like, explosion of joy. He's doing backflips down the aisle and dancing with everybody down the front. And then it electrifies and it goes to Elwood too. And Elwood's like, oh, wow, yeah, I get it. And that's when God... The band! And again, that's when God gives them choice C. It's not just choice A and choice B, and that's all there is. It's not the only option is to steal the money or let the orphanage go bust. It's like they can get the band back together, they can earn the money, and save the orphanage. And that is an option that wouldn't have occurred to them if they hadn't gone to the church and given themselves the option of hearing what God had to say, and showing them another way. So I love that scene. That's a great scene.
Well, and it's very similar for us, how we obviously see God in the movies. Music is also, you brought that up. It's music's super important for me in worship.
Yeah.
And draw me into the presence of God. And I had a moment similar where I kind of got to this point where I'm like, all right, I was kind of feeling like I should go back to church. I've been sort of underemployed long enough that I can get away with that not being the trigger of going to church. I was like, hey, I need a job, so I'm going to try church. And I just remember the Sunday that I went in, and, like, dude, I remember the sermon series that we just started, and I don't remember the music, but I do remember hearing God say, "I'm so glad you're home."
Oh,
And
that's
that was
awesome.
that light that, I see the light.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, and it's funny because I didn't see this until right now as we're talking.
Well, that's the way it always works when we do this thing.
Right. Yeah, we show up and ask the Holy Spirit to guide us and see where He's going to lead us and see what comes to mind and all that stuff.
That's right.
But we, when we get a mission, when we get a vision, a lot of times that's like, if we think we're walking with God in this, everything goes smooth, everything goes great, everything's awesome. It's like, oh, I'm walking with God, and now it's sort of like Harry Potter when he takes the lucky juice and he just knows where to go and all the right things to
Yeah.
do. Sort of like listening to a country song backwards. You get your dog back, you get your wife back, you get your truck back.
Yeah.
But it's not always like that, right? What we see as they're pursuing this mission from God is that it involves a whole lot of work and not even no shortage of problems.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, Elwood's apartment blows up. He's got no place to live. But and as Britt would like to say, when we are walking in our path in our the vision God's laid on us, it will bring community, and that's what they say is that it's like, oh, we've got to. It's not for us to do, just the Blues Brothers. It's for us, the band, to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely we need that fellowship, you know, the community.
Right? Did
Jake
I
and
hit
Elwood
you when
couldn't
you
have
were
gotten the money
drinking?
by themselves. Yes, I'm sorry. I was taking a sip of
No.
water.
So I've got some. I've got some on Riverside. Your video's super glitchy. It looks like it's going about 1/10 of the speed it should. When I see the video down on like YouTube or wherever else, it's going fine. So it's just the
Oh, good.
Riverside thing. Juan, shout out. Juan threw in this. That I want you to riff on here for a second, Sarah.
Okay.
The idea that chaos is part of the miracle.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Um, I think that, yeah, I mean, you just can't get away from chaos. It's just going to happen. And I think that there's kind of two sides to chaos, too, or let's say two different ways of looking at chaos,
Mm,
because the enemy is going to throw chaos at you, which is the way my life feels like it has been going lately.
right?
And you can either approach chaos like trying to, herd cats. Yeah. And that's not going to work very well for you, and you end up exhausting yourself and getting frustrated and tired and stressed out, and like sitting on the floor of your room crying and eating Ben and Jerry's. Not saying I've done that lately, but um or you can approach chaos with the fact that you're in a roller coaster approaching the biggest drop on the thing that's ready to take you through the loops and into the tight spins and upside down. And so you check your seatbelt and you hang on really tight and you're just like, all right, let's do this, which I think is what the Blues Brothers do.
Yeah, especially when they're going 120 miles an hour through under the trains in Chicago.
For real, legit,
This
120
idea,
miles an hour. Dang.
the idea of the chaos, and there's a sense, and Alan Arnold's written about this how our job is to bring creation order to the chaos of our lives. Basically, I just summed up his
Yes.
book in a half a sentence.
Have you read his new one
Um,
yet? It's really good.
I'm working my way through it.
Risk the real.
I haven't done a lot of reading of anything lately,
I know, me either.
but in the chaos, I love what you said. Like we should learn to be a little more comfortable with the chaos. Um, like the question that I wrote down was, do we find God in the chaos? Because there's again, our natural response is to fight it and try to organize. We try to organize the shit out of our lives. We're like, oh
Yes.
no, this when my life, and I know when my life's going crazy, I was like, oh no, I've got to my little corner here needs to be neat and organized. If I can just get my truck clean, then at least I'll have say over something where the rest of my life feels like chaotic and out of control. Or we can embrace it and just wallow in it and be like, this is just all it's ever going to be. Right. Um, even it'd be really easy. You mentioned that you gave up Skyrim for Lent. It'd be really easy to just I a few months ago my son brought over his Xbox and I was like, I haven't played a video game in a while. I just thought I'd play FIFA for an afternoon.
Oh gosh.
And it'd be really easy just to sort of my life's chaos, but at least I can go win a World Cup. on FIFA, and that feels pretty good.
I am ashamed to admit it, but there was one time I started playing Skyrim, and I am not kidding. I played it for 10 hours straight. And I'm embarrassed to admit that, but I did.
Here on the Men in the Movies podcast, we embrace embarrassing stories and honesty and vulnerability, which are all wrapped up in one.
Yes. Yeah, that was, you're right. God, what a time sucker. It's just, ugh. Yeah.
But when we do anything like that, anything that was just like, again, we're just like, I just need to find my little piece of not chaos. And it might be, like I said, it might be a hobby, right? You might lose wherever you lose yourself in, whether it's woodworking or, I mean, for a while, it could be fly fishing, it could be golfing. I may or may not be telling you things that I've lost myself into. Um, as my wife said, she's like, I need you to pick cheaper hobbies, and either that or it's not a problem, it's a hobby. So she calls it it's either a probably or a hoblum. Um,
I like it.
but like in this movie, there's a third option, and it's this idea where we sort of go with it. Like this has come up a lot in recent conversations. This the idea of judo. I wish I could sort of enter into some martial arts stuff, but as a as a 48-year-old man, my body is betraying me slowly, and I don't even I have a hard time wrestling with my 4-year-old grandson. So trying to get on a mat with somebody, I don't think I would get up. But this idea of like allowing that momentum to shift and turn and guide us instead of fighting it and instead of embracing it, we just sort of do the Neo Matrix bullet time where you're dodging it. You're allowing that to you're not really resisting, but you're not giving into it either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's kind of like what Jake and Elwood were doing because it's like they could try, like, okay, so Jake ended up
Oh,
going to
they're
jail.
causing a lot of chaos.
Well, this is true too. But hey, you know what? That's what Christians do when they partner with God, man. We like, no, what does Alan say? We push against the chaos, we force
Yeah.
chaos to take a step back and say, no, you don't get to call the shots in my life. I have got Jesus over here and you have to move back, not me. And stuff. But like, for instance, yeah, so before the movie even starts, Jake's in jail because like things got crazy in his life and he needed money and he thought the only way he was going to get it was to hold up a gas station, and stuff. And so then that's what happened when he tried to handle his chaos on his own, was he got thrown in jail, and stuff. But throughout the course of the movie, once they realize that they're on a mission from God and they're doing this with him, and they absolutely 100% believe that they've got God on their side and they are doing this mission that was given to them from him personally, and like they can't fail, they're just going through and they're complete, like you said before, they're completely unfazed by everything that happens. They're just rolling with
They make you feel
everything.
any
Don't you blaspheme in here, don't you blaspheme. Yeah, no, but it's like you were saying, they've got buildings falling down on top of them, they're being chased by hundreds of police cars, they've got phone booths exploding, like, and they just kind of get up and brush themselves off, and we're on a mission from God, it's all part of the ride.
right, and it's almost like this idea of stoicism. But I have problems with it mostly because I think I'm an expressive and emotional human being, so stoicism doesn't work for me. But again, going back to Alan's book a little bit, we will be surrounded by chaos. My garage is
Mm-hmm.
chaos, and Juan says his new life slogan is "I'm on a mission from God." So that
Yeah,
should
come
be
on,
all. That should
Juan.
be every follower, friend of Jesus.
Preach.
Should be I'm on a mission from God.
Preach.
But my garage is chaos. My laundry room's chaos. There's just clutter everywhere, it, what you how you described your life, Sarah, is chaos with all
Yep.
these demands, all these pressures, and everything. But what Alan said is we have chaos around us, but we don't let it in us. We don't let it in our hearts. And the Wild at Heart group has been talking a lot about this because the world is chaotic. I mean, Satan is sort of, to go back to movies we love, the Lord of the Rings,
Hey.
Sauron, or not even Sauron, but can't think of the big bad guy's name who was sort of the Satan in Melkor, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. I
He
think it is
couldn't
Melkor.
create anything, but all he could do is distort the creations.
Yeah.
So like orcs were basically distorted elves, trolls were distorted dwarves, and all these things are just distortions of creation. And so Satan tries to decreate. The enemy tries to bring that chaos in. He surrounds us with chaos so that, because he's trying to get us to react, to freak out, to give up, to lose heart. And what the Wild at Heart group has been doing is talking about when we feel that chaos starting to leak in, to bring the creation power of God against it. And
Yes.
it's exactly that simple. I bring the creation power
Yes.
of God against the chaos in my life and
Yes.
speak out specifically to the chaos so that you can be
Chaos
that
can't.
unflappable.
Chaos
Right.
can't.
And it's hard to do when your kitchen's a wreck, when your kids are going berserk and all this, where you feel like chaos is winning. You just have a library there by your computer
Hey,
there.
I always need to have Alan's books ready to grab when needed,
The Podfather.
The Podfather, my friend. I am so excited. He's going to be one of the keynote speakers at Realm Makers this year. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great.
Or you're getting sidetracked. No
Yeah,
more
well,
Realm Makers
it's what we
plugs.
do. Bunny trails.
So as we watch Jake and Elwood go through this, go through their, as we call it around here, their initiation, their process of maturation. Carrie Fisher keeps showing up. She blows stuff up. And she finally gets him in a tunnel as they're leaving. And oh, by the way, the really cool thing through all that chaos, because you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I fighting through this? Our car's out of gas. We're busting our butts trying to fill this theater. Elwood's hitting on somebody that apparently waits for him, but we never know. Like, that's a loose thread of
Twiggy. Oh my gosh, yeah.
yeah. But and then there's, as they're about to run away because everybody and their brothers out after them nowadays, a radio or a recording executive offers them money, and they say, okay, give us enough. They take enough for the orphanage. They say, give this amount. Was it to, what's his face again?
To raise music exchange for all of the equipment that they bought
Yes,
there.
to raise music, and then give the rest to the band. They weren't about keeping it for themselves anymore. They were about
Yeah.
giving back to their band. They weren't chasing it. And so then they run away. They're like, "Hey, we're out of here," but they're taking care of their band.
Yeah, they legit didn't
And
keep any of it for themselves. Not
right,
any of it. Just like 5,000 for the nun, everything else for everybody else. They didn't keep any of it for themselves.
it reminds me. I just read about this a couple days ago. How Jesus sent out the 12 two by two. They took
Mhm.
no cloak, no food, no money.
Nope.
They were on a mission from God.
They were on
Right?
a
To
mission
go
from
take,
God.
like literally. But the really interesting thing is, as we're back to Jake and Elwood in the tunnel facing Carrie Fisher, and she tells him this litany of why she wants him to die, and he's begging for his life. And so I just wanted to play that because when the chaos is surrounding us, when the chaos is coming after us, I sort of think this was his last moment where he does sort of transition here even though he still leaves her in the muck and the mud. But he does something at the end of this clip that I want to talk about. And as he's looking up there to see if she's buying that barrage of bullshit, Elwood's back there like, that didn't work. I hope I'm going to put my head between my knees and kiss my ass goodbye.
Exactly.
Jake does something neither one of them did the entire movie. He took off his glasses. And that changed something. He quit fighting it and he let, in this, and I'm not sure how this all works. Oh, look, Sarah took off her sunglasses.
Giving the puppy eyes.
But there's something to it that after all that barrage, he lets himself be seen. He says, I think that's his way of sort of coming clean, of letting her in, of being vulnerable. And it softened her. Like, she didn't kill him. Granted, he gave her like 3/4 of a kiss and dropped her in the mud and ran off again.
True.
But because, like, what was the other option? Was he gonna? And like, I even think in that's sort of a loving thing, instead of saying, "Hey, come on," because if she had joined them, she would just end up in jail with the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of nice options in that situation. I mean, I don't know. They could have killed her or something. They could have, got in the car and run her over or something like that. But yeah, no, there wasn't or I don't know. Maybe they could have invited God into the situation and said they were on a mission from God, and maybe she would have backed down, or something like that. But yeah, no, there wasn't a whole lot of good options in that.
So, all right, here's something super cheesy and dorky sounding.
Okay.
When he took his sunglasses off, she was able to see the light in him, which is what our calling sort of is anyway, is to let others see the light that's in us. But we don't do it when we're just spouting off all these reasons why the world is crazy, why our lives are crazy. But to say, hey, I am on a mission from God. I do have a purpose and I'm pursuing it pretty laser focused, tunnel vision, nothing's going to get in our way sort of mentality.
Yeah, no, I can roll with that for sure. I mean, they I like what you said about, like him taking off his glasses and kind of making himself vulnerable, because, like, he's got the glasses on, it's kind of his persona and he's cool, and, he like kind of gives off that vibe that he's got all the answers and he's really confident. And they were kind of in a situation there where, like, he didn't have a whole lot of confidence because Carrie Fisher's aiming a machine gun at his head, and so, and he, you could tell he's like, he didn't have all the answers. That's why he's spouting, there was a flood, there was an earthquake, there was like a drowning baby, and stuff. He's kind of just pulling everything out that he can think of and stuff. And he kind of just ran out of, answers and options. And so just kind of pulled off his glasses. It was just like, mercy, so.
Right. And again, this is not a spiritually based movie in any stretch of the imagination. Juan said he was no longer posing, which is true. Like, he lost the ability to bullshit anymore. He knew it was time to be real with her for a change. And that's where chaos takes us to, is sort of where Jesus does his best work. Again, going back to what Juan said earlier about the chaos, miracles only happen in the chaos.
Yeah.
Well, they take us to the point where Jesus can take over. Because we're like, all my stuff isn't working anymore. I'm going to take off my glasses. I'm going to give you myself. That whole idea. Again, why does that idea of salvation not work? Of, when I die, I'm going to heaven. Well, it doesn't do much for the 80-ish years we're here on earth, dealing with the chaos, dealing with the mud and the mire and the slug, the slime in the tunnel. What gets us through it is we don't just give Jesus our sin, we give him our story.
Yeah.
And we take off our glasses with him, and he's like, no, this is who I am. The old Baptist hymn, just as I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you come to that and say, I can't do it anymore, and he's like,
Yep.
aha, now we got something to work with.
Now we can go forward. Hit it. Yeah.
We're not there yet. We're gonna don't worry. We're gonna play the line. Don't worry, we'll play it. So Sarah, as we wrap up, um, super interesting conversation. I thought you had good stuff in here, and I think we as your notes are always the backbone,
Oh, thanks.
and then we just fill in the flesh and the skin and the bones and all that stuff. Um, anything else that you wanted to? Oh, the sunglasses are back on.
Yeah, I put them back
Anything
on.
else you want to
Of
talk
course.
about
Well,
before we hang up on our live stream and our YouTube?
yeah, I just kind of wanted to I guess challenge our listeners with what would your life look like if you had the faith of the Blues Brothers? Because my gosh, once these guys received their mission, they were so confident in what they believed that God had given them to do. They literally believed that they could not fail. And that took them through everything, through danger, loss of their home, no finances, having their lives
Our pets'
threatened.
heads falling
Yeah,
off? No,
our
wait,
pets'
that's a
heads are
different
falling.
movie.
Oh my gosh, I love that movie too. Though our pets' heads are falling off. No. Um, like loss of like everything, like threatened, have their lives threatened and stuff. But they just kept going on, and that was their immediate answer to everything. Like, they're not going to catch us. We're on a mission from God. Like, there's nothing they can do to us. We're on a mission from God. And stuff. And they just, to have that like complete and utter confidence, kind of just that's what was really jumping off the screen at me when I was watching this to prep for this podcast, was just like, what would my life look like if I had that kind of faith? Because it wasn't even that they weren't afraid of things that were like threatening them. They went through their whole experience expecting favor. Like, they went into
Right.
Ray's Music Exchange expecting that he was just going to give them the equipment they needed. They went into
Yeah.
each of these guys' workplaces in the band expecting that they were going to say yes. Like, they went everywhere expecting that things were going to work out, and they were going to get what they needed, and that people were going to give them what they needed, and that people were going to say yes, and people were going to join them and help them and stuff. I was just like, I was praying. I was like, Jesus, give me the faith of the Blues Brothers, where I just have that kind of like optimism and confidence, and then I expect you to work in my life and provide what I need, and to to be there for me, and put people in my life to come alongside me, and like, give me the breaks that I need. I was just like, oh Lord, give me that. So I just want to put that out there for everybody. Like, what would your life look like if you had the faith of the Blues Brothers, man? Because we're all on missions from God. All of us. He's given us all something to do. And he's given us
Yeah.
everything that we need to see it through. Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Well, do ya?
So before I wrap up, Sarah, I just want to say thank you. Can you tell us about your anthology again, and where? I know it's on Amazon, but the name and
Yes, it is called Frayed. That's Frayed. I believe the subtitle is Stories Held Together by Hope. And it's I'm not going to give you all of the authors because there's like 6 of us, but you can find it on Amazon. Um, well, I'll give you a couple to search for just in case you have trouble finding it. Jane Daly is one of the authors. P.S. Wells and J.F. Rogers. They have, I think, author platforms on Amazon. So if you search for one of them, if you can't find it, it should pop up. But yeah, that got released back in mid-January, so it's out there in the wild, running free. So
So check that out. And like what Sarah just said is he's given us everything that we need. And well, hang on. So Sarah, thank you for dealing with my curmudgeonly
Oh
uh,
gosh.
attitude, my crusty response to the movie. Um, I've seen the light.
You've
I've
seen the
seen the light.
light. Do you see the light? Yeah.
So I look forward to having you back on the podcast to talk about a non '80s movie
Someday.
someday. So what Sarah said at the very end is God's given us everything we need, and she said, "Do you believe it?" Because the Blues Brothers did. And as we close, as we sign off here, I want to play the clip that Sarah mentioned at the very beginning, because what they do is they list what they have and who they are, and they're totally cool with it.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast. And I couldn't quite go without saying thanks to Juan for what you added to this.
Yeah.
Juan gets the assist for the Blues Brothers podcast for sure.
Come on. Thanks
So
for
we're going to
joining
sign
us.
off for any of you listening or watching on the YouTube channel on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. I'll try to get better the rest of the year of doing this. And yeah, thanks again for listening and for hanging out and for your comments.